Our country has never been more divided than it is today, and it is near the breaking point. The reason it is so divided is that we now have three competing narratives about the nature of our country, and there's no common ground with any of them. That means there's nowhere to compromise or reach agreement. The first narrative has to do with the foundation of our nation. The founders believed, and the founding principle of our nation is that God gave unalienable rights to human beings, rights that precede and supersede government. But those rights can only come from God, because in a secular country, there's no higher authority than the government. The court called Supreme said that our nation cannot aid or favor one religion over another, so that we end up with no religion at all in our public square. We cannot mention God, so we can't even talk about unalienable rights in public schools. Generations have grown up not even knowing that we have unalienable rights. But our nation is a nation of rights, so I'm now acknowledging God. The only rights left are those given to us by the government or the consensus of the people. While unalienable rights are things that you can do without the government's permission, regulation, or interference, government-given rights are things the government owes you, things that you are entitled to. Since our nation changed its understanding on human rights, government spending has exploded, such that there isn't enough money in the whole country to meet all the demands for it. The second narrative is about the character of our nation. Actually, there are two narratives here. One, the first is that our nation is the greatest nation in the history of the world, a nation built on freedom that has lifted more people out of poverty and oppression than any nation in history. The other narrative is that our nation is inherently and irreparably flawed and must be dismantled and redone from the ground up. The simplest way to tell which narrative here is correct is by looking at our immigration numbers. No nation in the world has more people who want to move here, far more. Not only that, but those who find our country so reprehensible have no plans on leaving it to find a better one. They can't name one country that is better. A few countries score higher in public happiness or things like that, but there is no mad rush to go to any of them. So half our country wants to make it better, the other half wants to tear it apart and start over. The third narrative is about the morals of our nation, that our country is inherently racist and oppressive. Most recently, our nation has been torn apart by weeks of violent riots and protests over these same things. There are three problems, though, with all this commotion. First, I've been following all the news closely, and I see no concrete proposals to deal with or to solve this racism and oppression. There is a proposal to defund the police, which is interpreted to mean either a total disbanding of them or just a reallocation of much of their funding to social services. But that has nothing to do with inherent racism and oppression. The second problem is that this isn't really about racism and oppression. Why do I say this? The killing of George Floyd brought worldwide protests and violence. Yet every week, black communities in our big cities are battered by gun violence, killing the smallest of our children. And the protests are small, short-lasting, and peaceful. Why the difference? Because the major protests are organized by political groups with bigger agendas. They want to create as much dissatisfaction, disgust, and disillusionment as possible with everything about our current system, so that they can use a crisis to make basic, major changes to that system. If these groups were really interested in black lives, they would have been protesting the killings of our children years ago. And the third problem with all this commotion is that it's not meant to solve anything. Why do I say that? This overlaps a little with the last point. The people who have organized these protests don't want to fix the system, but abolish it and make a new one. It's also about blaming other people for all the problems. They can't tell you what they want other people to do to fix these problems. Some say they want reparations, money. So say we give everybody who wants the $50,000. After they buy that car, that flat screen TV, or maybe put down a down payment on a house, what will have changed? Will the system be fairer? Will everybody be happy now? Will everybody like everybody now? Nothing will have changed. The money will be spent, and everybody and everything will be back where we started. People forget that our entire current welfare system started shortly after the passing of our civil rights laws and was primarily meant to help these same people who had marched for these rights. When the problem for everything is that other people aren't doing enough for you, then there is nothing you can do for yourself that will make a difference. And then people lose hope, and you've lost everything. Nobody is giving any specific things that we can change. And actually, a lot of people like it that way because they want to take down the whole system. Without giving specific proposals, they want to focus on the system itself. The whole thing is wrong. Take the whole thing down and start over. Those people who remember history know where this is leading. This was done before in Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela, a few other places. Those who remember history remember that those were countries where people have been trying for decades to leave. They built walls to keep people from escaping. So what can we do to get through all this? For decades now, our political leaders have pushed for diversity. They said that that was our strength, and they were wrong. It weakened us with everybody pulling in different directions. Instead of focusing on what divides us, we need to have something that unites us. We need political leaders to show the way. Actually, it doesn't have to be a political leader, but somebody who can get the nation's attention. And right now, our nation is being run by whoever can make the most noise. Our founding principle of unalienable rights given to us by God is what made our country the freest and most prosperous in the world. I believe that should be our starting point. That is why our founders went to war to create this new nation in the first place. Yes, they had particular grievances with England, but those were merely examples of how England was trampling on their unalienable rights. The idea of our nation being reprehensible should be rejected by the mere fact that millions more people want to come here than actually can. Maybe in some people's minds the nation is inherently evil. When more people want to leave here than come here, then maybe we can talk about that. Is America racist? Does that mean that not everybody will like you for things you can't change? By that definition, perhaps so. But if you think you cannot achieve better things for your life by living wisely, no amount of government programs or government money is going to make any difference.